Welcome to the Dawn Jarvis Show with Dawn Jarvis, the diverse nurse. And in this podcast, we will be talking about healthcare, self-care, diversity, careers, and well-being from a Black woman's perspective. We're really happy that you're here. So if you're ready, let's get on with the show.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dawn Jarvis Show. And I'm Dawn Jarvis, the diverse nurse. And this is the podcast where I talk to and about busy leaders, professionals, and business owners, learning about who they are, what they do, and why they do it, and how they prioritize their own health and well-being and stay focused, positive, and productive. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful Cathy Knight, the owner of Isme People. And I met Cathy on a course that we did together during lockdown online. And I also have done some stuff with her on Clubhouse. And today, Cathy and I are going to talk about how to help kickstart young people's careers. And we're going to discuss how to access the scheme before it ends, the importance of helping young people to get their foot on the career ladder, and to remember not to give up when things in business change or go wrong. You can look for a different route and get to where you want to be. So hello, Cathy, how are you doing? How are you doing today?
I'm good, yeah, very well. Really pleased to be here.
Yeah, so good to see you, and I'm really looking forward to chatting to you and hearing all about what you're up to. So let me introduce you properly. Cathy is the owner of Isme People. She uses her 20 years in the recruitment industry to help small and medium-sized enterprises to identify and onboard and engage their staff. Through the pandemic, she saw her business change significantly, and I think she's going to talk to us about that. And during this time, she has pivoted her business and is currently on a mission to get 18 to 24-year-olds the help and support they need to get into the workplace by supporting the government's Kickstart scheme. She supports her clients to access the scheme and recruit the right trainee, and offers employability training once the candidate is in their work placement. So, Cathy, that's quite impressive. You've been through quite a journey with Isme People. So you're going to tell us a little bit about how you went from a corporate environment to running your own business and Isme People.
Yeah, so I guess I start at the beginning that I kind of fell into recruitment, as a lot of people do. So yeah. I went to university, studied marketing, and thought the next thing to do was to get a job in marketing, and whether that was in a corporate organisation or in a marketing agency. So off I went to a recruitment agency. So I went off to a deco who'd been recommended to me by a friend, and went in to register to look for a role in marketing. I was in the offices probably for about 2.5 hours, interviewed by their perms consultant and then their temps consultant. And then they spoke to me about had I considered a career in recruitment. I had no idea what that entailed. I'd never temped or anything like that, so I had no real understanding of it. But decided that actually, after they talked to me about it, it ticked a lot of boxes for me. There was a marketing element with it, marketing candidates and people, and actually kind of advertising jobs and ways you'll attract people. So I kind of was ticking that box, but also for me, it was the working with people. The thing that has always been important to me from probably a really, really young age, if you spoke to my family, was engaging with people, forming, relationships, talking to people. I've always been a people person. So actually for my product to be a person was probably the right thing. It just wasn't known to me at that moment in time. Mm-hmm. So then spent 15 years working with the Adecco group. So I worked in loads of different roles throughout that time, whether that was in a kind of branch environment. I ran like a big regional hub that I set up from scratch, which kind of grew my team from 7 to 21 in the space of a couple of weeks, really. And then I went into what they call recruitment outsourcing, where I worked on site for a large kind of corporate organisation and kind of headed up their recruitment function. So worked for companies like EE, the mobile phone company, Prudential, and also a company called Connect Group, who own people like Tufnells and Smiths News. So I was really fortunate, I think, to have to be surrounded by some really, really great people. So I learned from real experts in the industry. I was also lucky to be put on some really good training throughout that time. You know, one that really stood out was being put on a training course in Switzerland at the global head office for a week, where we were put up in this hotel, and the kind of training we did was kind of this bring actors in to do the training. There's a name for it and I can't remember what that is, but it was, you know, you were put in these situations and made to kind of learn and think on the spot about how you would deal with these situations. There was in the evening we had to pretend to set up a drinks and nibbles kind of evening for people that were then coming in. I think we got split into two groups. One group did it one night and the other night, and we had to deal with any problems that were thrown at us. So people were planted within the audience to kind of be difficult customers and come up with different problems that you had to think about and deal with on the spot. So had a really good 15 years with the Adecco Group, but after I'd had my second daughter, I felt like I kind of was enjoying being part of the whole kind of school, I guess, community. My eldest daughter had just started school, and actually getting to know mums on the school run and having that kind of interaction as well, which hadn't really been something I'd experienced until that point. I felt like I didn't want to have none of that, and to be the mum that dropped off you know, a tea, you know, breakfast club in the morning really early, rushed off and picking up late at night, and never really being around and being properly immersed in my kids being at school, because let's face it, they all grow up so quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah. So when I was on maternity leave with my second daughter, I remember my boss calling me and saying to me, look, we've got some news. The client I was working on site for at the time were taking their recruitment back in house. So I had the opportunity to choopy across to that employer, or to kind of, you know, go and leave the business and take redundancy. Or my employer was saying to me, we'll find you another role within our organisation, so don't worry. And I'd been talking with a friend of mine, a very good friend who also I had worked with previously as well, about whether we should go out on our own. For the last couple of months, she kept saying to me, I think we should just do it, Cathy, let's go for it. And actually this call came through, and it was like that kind of clarifying moment of, actually, I'm a big believer in everything happening for a reason. And I was like, I remember saying to my manager, I was like, Johnny, don't worry, because if this is what's happening, this could work out for me anyway. You know, but I don't want to go if I'm not going to get the redundancy payout. I wanted that as a kind of buffer to give me the financial security for my family to then be able to kind of go out and set up on my own. And I was lucky, they were really good to me, and they were really fair. And you know, everyone, even my old client called me and said, like, which way do you want to go? What is it you want to do? I'll make this happen for you. If you want to stay, brilliant. If not, you know, I know you've just had a second child. So yeah, and I remember leaving, and they said, look, you know, leaving on really good terms. If it doesn't work out, we'll, you know, welcome you back with open arms. So I also felt I had that kind of security, I guess. And I'm never one to burn bridges. I'm always grateful for, I guess, all the opportunities that I've been given. So I then decided that this was the time to set up on my own. Well, not on my own, I had a business partner, so I wasn't doing it alone. So Isme Recruitment, as it was then, was born in September 2017. We started, and actually the name in itself was something that was probably the hardest thing to come up with, because we went through everything for months. It felt like we were working with a guy who was doing our website and the marketing. And a lot of business owners will know that coming up with a name for your company is one of the biggest decisions, because there were two of us, so it couldn't have just been like one of our names. And we, you know, it was Knight and Isme were our surnames, and we were kind of combining them and feeling like we sounded like a solicitors, and it just wasn't just wasn't flowing, and it wasn't giving the right feel for the kind of business we wanted to create. But we both felt we were doing it partly to give ourselves a better work-life balance and to be flexible around our children. So my business partner had 2 girls, and I've got 3 girls. So Isme actually was a combination of both of our firstborns. So my firstborn is Ivy, and my business partner was Isme. So that's how Isme came about. And actually, when we kind of came up with it, like, oh, it's a bit of a play on words with, you know, that job is me, and those sorts of things. So we kind of felt it was it just kind of was one of those moments where we're like, yes, that's it, we're there. And we literally within minutes went on to Companies House and secured the names. So yeah, so that was the start.
Wow, that's amazing. And now you are working predominantly with the Kickstart scheme, and you know, and I've used your services for the Kickstart scheme. So I've got my lovely trainee assistant, executive assistant Rihanna, who I got through for your company. So how did you get into it? Because I didn't know anything about the Kickstart scheme until I met you, Cathy. So you know, I don't think people know much about it, and at the time there is an endpoint to it as well, so it's a brilliant offer. And so tell us a bit more about it and how it's available and why you started working with it as well.
So maybe I'll take it back as to why I got involved, and I guess the journey I went on from that point of deciding, right, this is it, I'm setting up my own company. So we kind of went along for the first couple of years with things kind of going, you know, I say going well, it's tough, you know, when you set up a new business. Neither of us had worked in, had recruited in the Bristol market for years, and we were initially sort of tapping into customers in our local area. So it was completely cold, really. We were having to build new relationships and find new clients. And actually we did that over time, and things, although it had been a tough, what would it have been at that point? I'm just thinking when the pandemic hit, probably 2 years. So we were about 2 years in, and it felt like we were just at that turning point where things were starting to kind of feel a little bit easier. And then we were all hit with COVID, in the sense of the pandemic hit, and the world changed. And I remember just having clients phoning me daily, hourly, saying, actually, we're going to have to withdraw that vacancy, that job offer to that candidate, or we need to put that vacancy on hold, and not knowing when we were going to kind of come out of it. And then the school shutting, and me and my business partner both going into this kind of period of homeschooling, the worry of not knowing. I think before the government announced that you could furlough as a director of a business, initially you weren't going to be able to do that. And I remember just thinking, well, I'm just falling into this kind of black hole now of not being able to earn anything, and my business isn't going to make any money, my clients are not recruiting, and therefore I suddenly have no income, and I have a family and a mortgage to pay and all those kind of things. My husband's a gardener, so he, at that point, again, we didn't know whether he was going to be able to work. As it was, he's outside and he was able to continue work. But I just remember these couple of weeks of everyone and everyone was in the same boat. We were just all sort of scrabbling around for information, or going to my accountant thinking, well, how am I going to earn any money? And then they announced that actually you could furlough yourself as a director. So we both furloughed, me and my business partner, for quite a few months. We were on furlough really until the kids went back in September, and then continued to part-time furlough to take some furlough. And it was a really weird time, because I think, for any parents out there that were homeschooling, it was, I could only describe it as hell, but maybe I'm being dramatic.
I don't think you are, Cathy, because my children are a bit older, and I thank the Lord that I didn't have to homeschool, because I wouldn't have been able to do it. So my hat is off.
I hold my hands up. I am crap at teaching my own children. I think if it was someone else's kids, I could do it, but when it's your own, and they are, I only had one at that time of school age, but what I had is two that were preschool age. So I have she's now 3 and a 5-year-old, but then they would have been not even 2, she was 1.5, and then in fact she turned 2 during the pandemic, and then the other one would have been 3, 4, that kind of age. So I had these 2 little ones to try and keep out of the way and occupied, whilst my youngest, I'm trying to help with maths, with English and everything else, and she was really not wanting to do it. So it was this constant battle of trying to get her to homeschool. So thankfully I was on furlough at that time, but I think as time went on and the months went on, both me and my business partner said, felt like we'd lost our purpose, we'd lost us, because a bit like, I guess, as a woman when you're on maternity leave, it's a little bit similar. You've got, you feel like sometimes you're not doing everything that well. You're, if your baby's been up all night and things like that, you feel like life isn't great, but you then feel guilty for feeling like that because you've got this beautiful child there and you're very lucky and all those sorts of things. It's a bit like that. You kind of felt like you just weren't achieving. And I think as somebody who has always, really worked hard and taken a lot of, a lot of satisfaction out of being able to achieve something and deliver something, to suddenly feel like you weren't doing that, I find it really hard. And I think when the schools went back in September and I was like, right, this is it. I think that the recruitment industry will start to recover, people will start to hire, there'll be a bit of confidence again. And then we went into, didn't we, a couple of weeks after the kids were back at school, we went back to that kind of rule of 6, and everything suddenly looked like it was going into a negative place again. And I remember just feeling really quite depressed and feeling that I got to a point where I think I hit a bit of a low in business, and I felt like I'd lost myself. I'd just been in this time that I just felt everything was getting on top of me. I mean, through homeschooling, the amount of times I cried in front of my children, which I didn't do before, but it just felt like this helplessness. I remember ringing my mum and saying, I think I need to go to the doctors. I can't cope with this anymore, which isn't like me. I'm very good at pulling myself out of that kind of place. But it just been too much. And my mum said at that point, I think you weren't even allowed to each other's houses, but she said, look, I'll have Ivy and do the homeschooling with her once a week. And I think they just opened up the preschools, and childminders were allowed to have children back again. So it meant I had a day a week where I didn't have any children, and I could just do stuff in the house and get on top of it. But yeah, when September hit and then things didn't really pick up, I kind of was in this place of, I didn't know what to do. My business partner was doing some other work, so she actually wasn't really involved. She was doing little bits in our business, but doing some other stuff at the same time. So I was kind of on my own. And then actually I got into networking. And I'd always hated networking. We used to do it because we knew it was how we needed to kind of get our name out there and meet people. But I remember we would go, oh God, you do this one, I'll do the next one. We'd be ringing each other before, going, oh God, I'm on my way to this thing, I really don't want to do it. I hate that, going into a room and knowing no one and making the small talk. Even though I'm a people person, I hate that. I don't know why. It just, and I've got a lot better at it. And actually doing it over Zoom and things like that, I just got really comfortable with it and got into a really good networking group I was part of called the Cobra Club, that it's Wiltshire based originally, but it all went online and went across the UK in the pandemic. And actually that saved me, I think, because I suddenly was surrounded by other business owners that had gone through the same sort of thing, understood how I was feeling about things. And actually I kind of was saying to myself, if I don't start to make some money between now and Christmas, I'm going to have to close the business, and I don't know what I'm going to do and whether I go back into a corporate role again, but this is going to be over because I need some income, and I need to pay bills, but there were business bills that came out each month. And I think I pretty much got to the wire, but got there, and it just, and people often say I'm one of those people that even when it seems really, really bad, suddenly something changes and it turns. And I've just managed to get to a point where I think I had a placement came through, and that saw me through for another month or so. But I was starting to get to the point where I had lots of new vacancies coming in, but was finding I had less and less time to actually do the recruiting for them and do all the admin that goes around all of that, posting the job adverts. So I decided, I'd heard about the government's Kickstart scheme and thought, do you know what? I could do with a Kickstarter in my business. And I think when they initially launched the Kickstart scheme, you had to recruit like a minimum of 30 people. So it made it really only available to large corporate organisations. They then created gateways that you could go through to be able to access the scheme. But at the start of this year, they changed it, that actually you could just recruit one. And you could recruit, one individual for your company, and therefore it opened it up to everyone, which I think was a key change for that scheme, because I think what Kickstart offers for both a candidate, and I'll go on to talk about what Kickstart is, but what it offers for a candidate is that experience and learning from somebody. But for a small business owner, it gives you that chance to employ someone and kind of learn what it's like to kind of, you know, have to have all the responsibilities as an employer, but have the support of their wages being paid and the cost of that being reimbursed to you and covered by the government. And that to me is key. And also what it does for employers is it allows them to take a risk on somebody that perhaps wouldn't have been somebody they would have recruited normally, because they'd have thought, oh, I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, they could be right, but do you know what, it's too risky for me to spend all, you know, the time training them and spending salary, you know, costs for 3 months, and then actually it doesn't work out. But when you're employing somebody in a Kickstart, you're happy to take that risk because actually it may well work out. And I've seen so many examples of people, you know, and I've had it myself, that, you know, I've got a guy working for me at the moment. He wouldn't have necessarily been someone who I would have seen as a person to work in recruitment. And he's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and is so committed to kind of supporting me and the business and working with me. But yeah, would I have taken that chance if I'd had to pay that salary cost from day one?
No, you wouldn't.
Probably
There's
not.
no doubt about it.
And recovering after a pandemic.
No,
and
the same with me, because that's the thing. It was sort of like it was a capacity solution too. So when you're a solopreneur, there's a lot to do, isn't there? There's a lot to remember, and you almost need another pair of hands, another pair of eyes, don't you, that can help you. And obviously it's your job as the leader to sort of like do those things, but there are things that you don't need to be doing that other people can be doing. And you know, so what I found through it is it's been really good, because it's made me think about my business in a more systematic way. And also I've got someone that I've got to tell what to do, sort of like guide them about what to do, and then it makes me think about what do I need to do in my business, and you know, what are the things to do that I'm not good at. Because I think you go through a point in your business where you can do it all by yourself, but then there's a point where you need to scale it up to actually make some money out of it and take it seriously, I think. And I think sort of the Kickstarter is perfect, isn't it? So the kicks, and also you talked about networking, which is my bag, and I'm writing a book about networking.
Absolutely hated it.
Yes, I know, but what's interesting to me is that you know, that you sort of like found a way to do it. But what is most interesting to me is that we probably met through networking, didn't we? And we've done business together. And that we met in a situation, we were on a course together, and then we met outside when we were able to meet. We a group of us were doing on the same course, and we met outside. I heard about the Kickstarters. We talked about what we did in our businesses, and I heard about the Kickstarter. Oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that. And then so that lots of things happening there, sort of like there's as you said, that you're in a room with other business owners who know what it's like during the pandemic, to sort of like know what it's like to go to the wire. Because I heard what you said, Cathy, and it was like that, wasn't it? You know, I said to my mother, I'll take 6 months at a time. You know, I'll see how it goes for the next 6 months. You know, and some people take less time, don't they, to think about, you know, whether it can be a go or not, or whether they need to go back to work. So you don't want to do that, I think, because you know, you kind of come out of, not to say that I'd never do it, and you know, and that's, but I'm quite happy with it. I'm not someone to give up, and I think for me it did not feel like I was ready to say, do you know what, I've been beaten by a pandemic and therefore my business is over. What did happen is my business partner ended up leaving, so just due to her own personal sort of circumstances, and she had her husband off work after having a knee operation at the time, so she was kind of the breadwinner and bringing all the money in, and needed some kind of security. So so sadly we ended up going our different directions, although we've been best friends for years and still are, and she's still my biggest cheerleader now. But that was really hard, because I remember someone saying to me, someone again who I met through networking, gave me some really good advice when that happened, to say, you're grieving, you know, the loss of what was going to be this, you know, this dream of this business together, that now isn't going to happen. But what you know, give yourself a week to just kind of digest and get your head around that, and then come back with what you want to do, because this is your business now. And actually,
you can make the decisions, and there may have been things you've compromised on in the past, but now you don't need to. You can take this business in your direction. So it was at that point that I really took, and that's probably around sort of the time that we met, Dawn, when I was doing a few different coaching programs at the time, which helped me to really think, right, okay, what sort of clients do I want to work with? What is important to me in this business? What do I want this business to be? What do I stand for? What am I passionate about?
Yeah.
And one of the things I have always been passionate about is helping people to kind of develop their careers. And I guess, I come at it from a kind of HR recruitment world anyway. So I've always kind of sat in that space. But I think in recruitment, you get two kinds of people. You get the people who are in it for the deal and the money, and you get the people who are in it for the people. And that can be, both the clients that they're working for to find them the right person, and the candidates who are getting that job. Absolutely. And still to this day, it lights me up that when I ring somebody and make them that job offer that they are delighted with, and a client to say to them they've accepted that job offer, there's no feeling like that if that's what, if you're in it for the people. I mean, I guess if you're in it for the money, you're still excited by it, but that's just not me. It's never been.
Well, I think it's good to be passionate about something, and I really like what you talked about. At the time we met, we were going through stuff. We were finding out, what our businesses were, what was our mission, what was our purpose, why were we doing it. And it's really good that that you saw the reason to carry on, the reason that you were doing it, and that gave you some drive, didn't it, to do what you're doing, and you're helping young people get their foot on the career ladder, which must be very rewarding.
Yeah, so I think, so to go back to how I then got involved in Kickstart. So I was looking at it for my own business and thinking, do you know what I could do with an extra pair of hands? This would, potentially be a good option for me. So when I was reading all the information on the government website, it talked about, as an employee for Kickstart, you needed to also have a solution as to how you were going to train your individual around employability skills. So that's things like how to write a really good CV, how to tackle interviews, how to apply for jobs. So the whole idea about Kickstart is that they're getting 6 months paid work experience. So their salary is covered by the government. So the government will cover their salary at national minimum wage. And that's for 25 hours a week. So they're getting that experience by working for your organisation. But at the same time, you're making them more employable afterwards. So I looked at this and thought, that's great, I can do all of that. I've spent years supporting people with, how to apply for jobs, how to tackle interviews. I do that with candidates all the time. So for me, that comes naturally. But then I thought, this could be bigger actually, because lots of other companies won't be thinking like that. Even just doing the actual initial recruitment and working with the job centres to recruit individuals into these roles, I knew was going to be a bit of a long-winded process and a little bit like pulling teeth at times, which it has 100% been. I think a lot of that's been in the press recently about Kickstart has been companies complaining about how long and slow that process is. And I have 100% experienced that. But I've learned as I've gone along the ways to try and speed that up, how to try and, I've met contacts as I've gone along that have been helpful if I've, had things aren't working in another location, and they've escalated it, because it's a typical kind of government situation where you can't ring anyone. There's no telephone numbers on your list. It's all emails, and you're trying to fix a problem and you can't. And you're like, oh. So what I decided to do was to create a service where I'm not a government gateway. So there are what they call Kickstart gateways, where they get paid by the government to kind of do the application for you. And I think they get paid £300 to do that. I don't get that. I missed the boat on becoming a gateway. But I was just quite passionate about creating something that would help my clients and would help the candidates and would be a really meaningful experience for them. So what I do for my clients is I do the application process for them. I put the application into DWP. Once the application's approved, and there's been times when it hasn't been approved and we've gone in again with a bit more information, and they all seem to now be approved. I think I understand what they're looking for and how to answer the questions. But then once it's approved, then I work with my client to create a job spec and complete a template that you have to complete for Department of Work and Pensions, and then the candidates are referred to me. I screen them, and then so I'll do an interview with them over Zoom myself. If I think they're worth my client then interviewing, they would then almost do the second stage interview. So my clients don't have to go through lots of candidates that aren't right. They pretty much have seen, you know, most of the candidates that get interviewed by my clients get offered the job, to be fair, because I work really closely with the clients to understand what they want in the first place anyway. And then once their person starts, I help them do the HR paperwork they need. So a lot of my clients are small businesses and they perhaps haven't employed anyone before. So I provide them with a contract of employment, HR policies, an offer letter that they can then give their individual. So they've got all of that piece covered as well. I don't do the payroll for them. They do have to do, you know, their own payroll and any costs associated with that. If they need equipment, they, you know, the company need to cover that cost as well. But what they then do is they come into a weekly mentoring program with me, where every other week we do a topic, whether it's kind of CV tips, interview tips is a session I've run with one of my groups this morning. I also get guest speakers in to talk to them about like their career journeys, to kind of give sort of inspiration as to how people have gone into different paths and got to where they are today, and actually kind of, you know, really telling them that it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go, and life throws different things at you that send you in a different direction, but actually it's all meant to be, you know, that's just the path you're supposed to follow. That's kind of what I believe, not to get too woo, but I'm not particularly woo, but I just in my head that I think, yes, you know, that's we've all got a different route that we're going to go on, and then the weeks in between, and we have like a shorter sort of check-in call just to check how they're getting on, and if there's anything that's come up that they want to share with the wider group, because we come together as a group of Kickstarters. So there's other people that are going through the same journey as them and working for other clients of mine that they get to meet through that process as well. So and I've loved doing it. I feel like it's a chance to give back, and a chance. I think the one thing as being a small business owner, probably one of the things I miss now is I used to manage big teams, and I actually loved, you know, if I spoke to anyone who I managed years ago, they would always say always about bringing everybody together, getting everybody on board to achieve the same thing. I'm not, I think of myself as I'm not really competitive, but I am if I'm in a team, like we're in this together, we're going to do this and that. So and my husband would probably say, well, you totally are competitive, but I'm like, but not in a one-on-one situation. I like it to be, we're all doing this. I remember winning an award as a branch manager, and it was branch of the year, and that was the best branch of the year. So all me and my team got to go up, and that was the perfect award for me. If I'd won branch manager of the year, I felt like, well, it's not all about me, it's about all of us. We couldn't have done it without, you know, the collective
absolutely
team.
Absolutely. So so you work with young people, and you really get it. Has there been a book or something that's sort of like really sort of like that you've read that's been quite inspirational for you?
Yeah, I mean, I find I get very little time to read these days, and a lot of what I do end up reading business books and things like that. So, and there's loads of good business books. And then I'm like, oh, I need a bit of fiction and a bit of time away. So, we did have a holiday in Cornwall at the end of May. So I've got, like I said earlier, 3 children. So there's a lot of mummy, and I don't get that much time, but I was away with all my family. So my mum and dad were there, my sisters. So I got the most time I've had to actually read for quite some time. And I read The Midnight Library, which I had in a pile of books to read for ages. And I found it, if you've read it, it's a book about how somebody has just committed suicide, and she's in that kind of space between, you know, being alive and being dead, and the space in between. And what she gets to experience in that time is the different way her life could have gone if she'd taken different choices and gone down a different route. And actually, sometimes, you know, at the point she was dying, she had regrets about her life not going in a certain direction. And actually, when she got to experience that life, she found that actually it wasn't as great as she thought it would have been. And actually the lives that she perhaps hadn't even thought about living were the lives that were much more rewarding. And it really made me think it's like that sliding doors moment of, you know, our lives, they go in different directions depending on the decisions we make. But actually we kind of have our endpoint we're always going to get to, and we just kind of go in different directions to get there. But actually no decision is necessarily a bad decision. It's just a decision that's right at that point in time.
I love that.
Yeah, and it really resonated with me because I think like that anyway. So yeah, when I read it, I was just like, yes, I like that.
Yeah, and I love that you've sort of recommended a fiction book, because as you know, you sort of like, oh, like I feel like I buy a business book once a day at Amazon. Amazon is my best friend. But The Midnight Library is by Matt Hay, who is a mental health advocate and has had his own struggles with depression and suicide. So I think that's a really good recommendation, and I'm going to read it actually, because I haven't read any fiction for ages, and I would really like to do that. And I love what you're saying about the decisions that you make, you know, not necessarily bad. And sort of like, wouldn't we all love, I mean, I love the film Sliding Doors anyway, but you know, wouldn't we all love to sort of like see what would have happened if we hadn't missed that train, or if we had made a different decision. So I really love that.
And I think I was going to say, what it almost says to you is, don't live with those regrets of, if I'd gone down that route, my life would have been so much better, because chances are it wouldn't. And actually just live the life you've got, I think, is probably the message that kind of comes out after you've read it.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm going to read it, and I'll put the link in the show notes as well around it. So have you got anything you'd like to share with the audience? I think you've got some sort of like resources.
So I've recently relaunched my website. So after my business partner left, the website was very much just about the two of us. The business name was Isme Recruitment rather than Isme People. But I felt, when I was kind of going on this journey about what I wanted to be, I kind of decided that my clients that I was really enjoyed working with smaller businesses, where I could really be a partner for them and really help them on that journey of employing people. So I needed a new website to kind of, talk to people in that way, and kind of and give the messaging that was right now for this new business. So Isme People was sort of I was rebranded as Isme People, and the new website has a couple of downloads that I wanted to put there for candidates and clients. So at the moment, for clients, I have put on a document with example interview questions. So when people are interviewing, they're often like, what shall I ask? And it's just a good crib sheet to have there to kind of think about, right, okay, I'm going to ask that one, I'm going to ask that one. Some of them are like ones that would naturally link to competencies, if you had kind of key competencies that you wanted that individual to have, but some of them are just the more generic ones. I just put some of my kind of favorites in there, and ones that I find useful. And for candidates, I have a download for CV tips, so tips to think about when you're writing your CV. And as a recruiter with sort of 20 years of looking at CVs, I know what recruiters are looking for, and I know how we skim read things and how important it is to have that information at the top. We're looking through CV after CV. You can imagine that gets very repetitive. So you literally, I mean, I do not fully read CVs, unless sometimes if I'm going back to them, I might do, but chances are I just haven't got time. And then interview tips as well. So in fact, I used that document with my one of my Kickstart mentoring groups this morning. We went through all the different things that they need to think about when they do interviews. And then in 2 weeks' time, we're doing some role plays based on that, which they're delighted by. They were all like, oh, and I was like, look, come on, you've all said at the start of this that you get really nervous when you're doing an interview. And I said, the more you practice it, the more comfortable you feel.
And that goes back to that training you enjoyed with your corporate company about role playing, and sort of being in those situations, but doing it in real time. I've done those kind of trainings. I actually used to go out with an actor that actually had a company called Role Plays that did that sort of, like, used to test people in corporate situations.
It was
to
brilliant.
do that. And And the experiential learning of it is absolutely
that was the word I was looking for.
Experiential learning is fantastic in it, because it puts you in that real-time prep. And I know for interviews for like senior jobs that I've been for, sort of actually having that prep in real time with people taking it very seriously has been very, very helpful, because it's sort of like you're thinking on your feet and what you would say. So I think that's really, really good.
We did the theory today. So, and again, you're thinking of learning styles, people learn differently. And so, that kind of role play learning, although I might go, oh God, I don't want to do that. When I actually do it, I find that that's a really good way for me to learn. Absolutely. But it's not for everybody. Some people like the theory. So, I'm trying to make sure when I run my sessions that I'm kind of addressing that and doing something that is suited to everybody's learning style. We went through behaviour profiling a couple of weeks ago and I used a tool called Miro and had somebody in who's a Miro practitioner to come and talk them through what the different personality or behaviour types, not personality types, what they mean. And actually it was really interesting, because I've looked at most of their reports to see how they come out, because it's helpful for me when I'm kind of mentoring them to kind of understand what their personality preferences are and how they tend to behave and what's naturally their behavior type. So yeah, that's been a really good insight as well.
Fantastic.
Have you seen Rihanna's? Because Rihanna did that. Yeah, brilliant.
Yes. So we need to talk about that actually. Yeah. So and you're so busy. You're a mom. You've got your own business. You're running this Kickstarter program. You're mentoring. You even find time to read, Cathy. How do you both stay focused and positive and manage your own health and well-being in all of this?
So I'd say probably my biggest fault is relaxing. I'm really rubbish at sitting there and watching TV. I can manage a series where it's like an hour long. Sit there and watch a film, I get really bored. And I was like it as a child, and I've never been great at watching films, but I like to do stuff that kind of makes me switch off. So go for a run, and I never listen to music or anything when I run. I was talking to a friend about this the other day, because she's like, oh, I listen to podcasts, and I'm like, no, for me, I could go for a really long run and I just want the quiet. And I don't know if that's having 3 young children where my kids range from 8 to 3, and I've got mummy constantly, that actually just listening to the birds singing and the traffic noise or whatever is just bliss in a way. So so going for a run, generally doing exercise. I like to stay fit, and I find that definitely helps my my mind and kind of to kind of do something that isn't work. And I love baking. I've always been someone who's baked my own birthday cake from the age of 7 kind of thing.
That's amazing.
Always been into cooking and bake. So I made a unicorn cake last week for my daughter's 5th birthday. And that's me time. That's for me is relaxing, cooking and baking. Kind of being in the kitchen and doing something that I'm just focused on what I'm doing, and putting a bit of music on and dancing around while I'm doing that. That to me is
that sounds perfect. That sounds perfect. And I feel the same about I like doing dinner parties, and I like baking, but I don't like cooking the everyday dinner. I don't like doing tea. It's just like I like sort of I find it's like art, sort of baking, isn't it really? So I wasn't very good at art, but I do like baking. So are we going to see you on the Great British Bake Off, Cathy?
I don't think so. I don't think I could fit the time in to do it. I remember when I was growing up, actually, this is probably relevant in the whole Kickstart thing, but wanting to be like a cake decorator, and my mum's going to send me on this course to do it and things like that. And then I kind of came to the conclusion, my friend's mum was a cake maker, and she used to make cakes, and I remember she was getting really bored because she was having to just do them again and again and again. And I was like, for me it's enjoyment, and I enjoy doing all of that at the moment. I don't want to get to a point where it isn't enjoyable anymore.
I agree with you. I agree with you. That was my being a chef was my second choice of career after nursing. And you went when you did your work experience when you're about 15, they wouldn't let you do it in a hospital, so I did it in a hospital kitchen. And then and then it was too much like work, and I thought, oh no, 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 I'd rather do it for joy rather than sort of like, oh no, it's got to be right. No.
Same,
So
definitely
yeah,
same.
same, it's the same. So we come into the end. It's been so brilliant talking to you. How can people get in contact with you, talk about the Kickstarter scheme, and so find out what you're up to generally?
Yeah, so everything is on the website, so that's ismepeople.co.uk, but I'm also on all the kind of social media, well, most of the social media channels. I'm on LinkedIn, do a lot on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook. Not on Twitter. I don't really do a lot on Twitter, which I know actually is quite a big one for a lot of people, but
yeah,
I can just about cope with 3. So.
Yeah. I do Twitter, but it's not. And I have found work on there, but it's not the main one. LinkedIn is the main one. But a lot of health people are on Twitter, which is one of the reasons that I do it. So I think it depends on the industry, depends on your clients, and whatever they favour is the best one to do. That's what I find about sort of like social media. So is there anything that you'd like to sort of like share with the audience just before we go?
I think my biggest bit of advice, and I guess I've talked a bit about this, is just don't give up on that dream. So if you've got something that you really want to do, so I had a Kickstarter recently that came onto a Zoom call with me for a marketing role, and he just got a first in his degree in sound music production.
Mm-hmm.
And really wanted to get into that career, but was kind of parking it and going down the marketing route. And as it happened, I know someone that Dawn, you know as well, a friend of ours that is a singer, songwriter, music producer, who really wanted to have a Kickstarter. And we were just about to start that process. And then this guy came on the screen. I was like, oh, I know someone in that industry. Is that what you really want to do? Or do you want to do the marketing thing? And he's like, well, I really want to do that, but it's so hard to get into. It's who you know, not what you know. I was like, right, let me connect the dots. He's now working for her. She
That's
said,
amazing.
the feedback's been brilliant. He's delighted. And I, when I talked about those light bulb moments earlier on about when you make that offer to a candidate, that was one of them. It just felt great. It just felt like it was meant to happen. But that's an example of it. Don't give up on that dream. If there's something you really want to do, you might go in a bit of a windy path to get there, but just focus on that dream and don't kind of forget that and forget the reason.
And also, I'm bound to say that's a bit of networking, because that's someone we both know that you were able to place with somebody because you knew them and knew what their requirements were. So that that's amazing, and amazing that you can do that in your business. So thank you so much, Cathy. It's been absolutely fascinating and really good to hear about you, your business and what you do. Lots of information, lots of resources, advice and tips as well, and even a book recommendation. We had it all today, Cathy. So it's been really, really good. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It's been a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed it. First one I've ever done.
Oh, so you've been a star.
My podcast YouTuber cherry.
Yeah, so that's it for today. That's it for the Dawn Jarvis Show today, which is brought to you by dawnjarvis.com. Take care, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Dawn Jarvis Show. If you enjoyed this episode, there are 2 things you can do. Number 1, leave Dawn a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean so much to her if you took a moment out of your time to post your thoughts on the show. It will help Dawn reach so many more people and help them with their well-being. Number 2, subscribe to Dawn's email list, the Diverse Nurse Digest, using the link in the show notes. Until the next time, thank you and goodbye.